Episode of the Just Baseball Show for Tuesday, May 16th. Jack, Aram, Willson Contreras is catching again. That was a great saga. Also, happy belated Matt McLain Day. He was the two-inning shortstop last night for the Cincinnati Reds. We'll talk about that. Talk about what's going on in the NL West between the Dodgers and the Padres, with a little bit of Arizona sprinkled in as well. Then we've got some hot Mays. What's going on with the Willson thing, man? First of all, is there anything non-baseball you want to talk about off the top?
No, not really.
Life's
Been pretty status quo. I got nothing that's bothered me necessarily, because that's usually the only reason I come up with something off the top. So nothing crazy. But that Willson Contreras thing was kind of something I was very eager to talk about again, just because we're not going to rehash the whole thing. I just think, again, they continue to show how haphazard I think the decision making is when you do something like this. Also, and I hate piling on the Cardinals because I really like the Cardinals organization. My girlfriend's whole family is like a lineage, like going back like to like the beginning of the Cardinals of just fandom there. But dude, like the Jack Flaherty addressing the media was a tough look. Like, I can get outs at any velocity stuff. I get that he's frustrated about being asked about his velocity because, let's be real, it's injury related. It's because his shoulder and his elbow. And I get it. I'd be very frustrated too. But like, that's probably not the best way to go about it. But again, that's a guy that's dealt with a lot of injuries. I give him the benefit of the doubt there. But I'm imagining if that's the way he's reacting there, like, what were those meetings looking like with Willson Contreras, where it's like, you know, everyone says not to point the fingers, and then everyone's pointing fingers. So I just think it's nuts that they made this whole media shit show, happen just to have him right back behind the dish again. Like, what are we doing?
So the Willson Contreras thing that we are referring to, and, we pretty much spent an entire episode talking about it literally last week. I mean, this Willson Contreras thing went down on May 6th. They announced that Willson was not going to be catching for the foreseeable future. He was going to DH. He was going to play some corner outfield. And then John Mozeliak said he wasn't going to play any corner outfield. So he was going to DH for the next several weeks. We were under the understanding that like Kisner and Barrera would be the catching tandem for a month or more. And here we go on May 14th. This article drops, and on May 15th, Willson Contreras is back catching for the St. Louis Cardinals 9 days after it was announced that Willson was no longer catching for the St. Louis Cardinals. I mean, again, we talked about the panic and how that is bleeding into transactions that are being made, how that is bleeding into Ali Marmol addressing the media. And this is another point of panic where I think they look at what they did on May 6th and said, well, that was really freaking stupid. And then they work back and they negate everything they said last week. I mean, this is a shit show right now.
It's pretty embarrassing. And this quote is the funniest from Ali Marmol. This was via John Denton of MLB.com.
Yeah.
We felt really good about the progress that we've made, and it lines up really well for him to catch on Monday with Jack Flaherty on the mound. That was Ali Marmol. What fucking progress did this guy make?
It's been a week.
There's no way that he's made any massive progress in anything that they needed to see. Regardless, like, here we are. He's back catching again. But yeah, it's just like, I do wonder at what point do they, and I think it's transcends Marmol. I think, you're seeing some things in the front office that, are uncharacteristically shaky. But I mean, I wonder if this team's, they're starting to play better. They had a nice series in Boston.
For sure.
But I do wonder, like, if things don't go well by the end of the season with just how haphazard everything has been, I wonder how long Ali Marmol makes it.
I don't know. And like, I was trying to think about, I think the best way to look at the coaching carousel thing is college basketball, college football, because usually you see the quick hooks there, if you see any of them. The NBA, but the NBA is such a unique situation because Monty Williams, the Suns were great, and then Monty Williams got fired out of nowhere. It was really weird, but it doesn't really make sense. I was thinking like the Willie Taggart situation at Florida State. I was also thinking the Kenny Payne Louisville situation. Louisville basketball hired Kenny Payne to be the head coach last year, and they won 2 or 3 games. It was the worst year in program history, and he enters this year on the hot seat. Ali Marmol was the young and exciting hire after Mike Shildt was surprisingly let go, which I think everybody knows in hindsight was the wrong decision.
Yes. That's actually a great point. That's kind of the first domino of this kind of chaos.
It absolutely was the first domino. For some reason, they wanted to move off Mike Shildt. Which reason? I don't know. Was he not as analytical a thinker as you were hoping that he was going to be? Like, did the Cardinals want to get a bit newer school and get rid of the old school guy? Look at the king of the pre-arb deal. Look at the best exec in baseball right now. Alex Anthopoulos with the spiked up hair has Brian fucking Snitker in the dugout. Those guys couldn't be more different. Click and Dusty Baker won a World Series last year. Those guys couldn't be more different. You should have old school and new school. I thought it was really stupid to let Shildt go. I thought it in the moment. I'm really glad that I've been proven right. I'm not glad because Ali Marmol, I think, will be out of a job soon.
You think so? Like, here's the thing. What if they play well? Like, they won 3 straight in Boston. If they turn it, like, what is the tipping point? Because I do think that last year was, by any stretch of the imagination, was a disappointment at the end of the day. You know, where they came up short in the postseason, that was a disappointment. They had a great regular season. Even if they turn this thing around and get bounced in the first round again, I still think that you probably let him go, right? So I think they'd really have to have like a really impressive turnaround and play pretty well in the postseason.
Bigger than that, listen, it probably isn't bigger than that, but in the scope of the St. Louis Cardinals, it may feel bigger than that. He's got to have support of the clubhouse. Like, he has to have a player's vote of confidence. And we've talked about that. That's been well documented on this show. I don't think the manager of the St. Louis Cardinals has the blessing of the St. Louis Cardinals clubhouse whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to take a anonymous survey there. I would love to see what they'd have to say, because
approval rating, man. I want to know.
Yeah, I would love to know that.
So yeah, I think his time is ticking here. I thought this was a pretty stupid thing. If you're going to dig your heels in on your $90 million catcher not catching, have it be for more than 9 days.
Yeah.
And he's coming back with the guy in Jack Flaherty, who lashed out at the media and said, I can get outs at any speed. It's a lot harder to get outs at 86, 87, Jack.
Yeah, it just objectively is. And I feel for him given all of his struggles, health-wise, but I mean, they got to ask that question. I didn't mind him getting frustrated. Where I got bothered was like, if you're asking me this question, you don't know anything about pitching. Like,
false.
Gaslighting is that? Like, that's just ridiculous. Like that's just, they got to ask you the question. I thought the reporters handled it relatively well, actually very well.
There are a ton of pros in that market too. I mean, we know Katie and Derek Gold is really good. There are a bunch of other great beat writers in the St. Louis area. So we'll move off of St. Louis and get to something awesome. Again, happy belated Matt McLain Day, the shortstop for the Cincinnati Reds. It was the 2-hitter last night in Colorado. McLain, I just want to run through his numbers real quick, and then you give me the breakdown, because this is a top 100 guy on Just Baseball's list. Matt McLain, what?
Nowhere else, though.
Nowhere else? Are we the only one with McLain in the top 100?
At least at the start of the season, we were the only ones.
We were the only ones with Mason Miller in the top 100 at the start of the season.
I think Fangraphs too.
Fangraphs had Miller? Okay. But Matt McLain, a top 100 prospect according to Just Baseball. 38 games in AAA to start this year. Also, holy shit, we're already 38 games into the minor league season. That's kind of crazy. Yeah. But 38 games, he slashed 348, 474, 710. That's an 1184 OPS. 12 doubles, 12 homers, 40 RBIs, 10 bags, a 17% walk rate, a 20% K rate, a 193 WRC plus, where he ranks in AAA baseball, so the PCL and the International League together. First in OPS, just ahead of Christopher Morel, who was killing the ball. Tied for third in homers, only behind Lucan Baker in Memphis and Joe Adell. Third
Two power guys, like just two point blank power guys.
Exactly. And not prospects anymore. Adele was graduated from all of his cameos, and Baker's 27, 28 years old. Third in RBIs, second in slugging, only to Morel. Second in extra base hits, only to Ronnie Mauricio. Shout out Ronnie Mauricio. And first in AAA baseball in total bases. This guy with 24 games at short, 13 games at second, was probably the best player in AAA baseball through the first month and a half of the minor league season.
I think so. I think when you factor in he's playing shortstop at a high level, he's stealing bags, hitting for power, walking, like you mentioned, like the near 500 on base. What was the on base percentage again?
OBP was 474.
Yeah, like, dude, what the hell is that? 1184 OPS. Like, what's amazing with McLain, so I was talking about this about like what the deal was last year, because he didn't have a bad year, but it wasn't like, it was the year that kind of made him fall off of top prospect list, which was interesting because he's kind of fast tracked to AA.
Yep.
I think he was trying to make the adjustment, and in doing so, he's like, well, maybe be a patient hitter. I'm not going to expand the zone, and I'm just going to hit strikes. And I think he was too passive. And I always talk about the towing the line of patience and passiveness. Patience is a guy with a low chase rate who walks and, swings in the right spots. Passiveness is a guy that, maybe takes hittable pitches and puts himself in too many 2-strike counts when, you don't want to take everything, right? Like you don't want to just always be letting pitches go. There's a lot of spots where you want to be a little aggressive. So I think he was passive in AA, and that resulted in a higher strikeout rate because the swing and miss wasn't bad. The swing looks good, and it seemed like that to me. So now he comes in this year, he's a little bit more aggressive, but he still has that patience. So he's walking, he's hitting for power because he's, not letting those hittable pitches go, and he's added a little bit more juice. So now he's kind of just checking every box. Another one of those guys where I think it's really hard to poke a hole in his game. And if you look at it from a Major League Baseball standpoint for the Cincinnati Reds, like I know they're not competing for a World Series, but they just had a nice series in Miami. They're hanging around, and this makes them better. Their shortstop position was as bad as any in baseball. And even if McLain is a little slow out of the gate, he brings you speed. He's a good defender. He's going to run into some baseballs, especially in Great American Ballpark. He makes the Reds better right away, whether he gets off to a hot start or not. So that's what I'm really excited about too. But I think he is going to play perfectly in Great American Ballpark. A guy with slightly above average power, that power is going to play up.
Yeah, 100%. The conversation that we have regarding McLain on the call-up recently, when we've talked about him, when we've done the Reds top 10, when we've talked about guys that are off to a great start of the year, even when we did our top 100 rundown, the word that jumps out about McLain is floor. Like, this guy is as high a floor of a top 100 guy as you will find in Major League Baseball or in minor league baseball, I guess. Yeah. McLain, the safety of Matt McLain hedges the massive volatility of the best prospect in baseball in Elly De La Cruz. So while you can dream on this middle infield tandem for the next decade of Elly De La Cruz at short and Matt McLain at second, you know that you are getting a very safe prospect in McLain, and you're getting a meteoric prospect in Elly De La Cruz. And I think that you can get excited about both of those things. And I think that you can get excited about McLain in the same way that you got excited about a rookie Jonathan India in 2021 and a rookie Spencer Steer at the end of last year. I think that there is a ton of reason to be amped for a guy that won't be the flashiest coming up, because he's going to give you a WRC plus well over 100, and he's going to accumulate WAR over the course of this season. View this guy in the same light as you viewed Spencer Steer.
I was going to say, he's almost a blend of Steer and India to me, in a good way. Like, I think he's more well-rounded. I think he's a more well-rounded player than both of those guys. Will he be as good as John India? We'll find out, because at the end of the day, the goal of the sport is to hit, and Jonathan India can really hit. But yeah, I think in terms of the entire skill set, McLain is really, really well-rounded. So I'm excited about that. The one last note I'll make on him too is, I think he was as big league ready as they come. You look at like who he was getting hits off of, who a lot of his home runs were off of, solo oppo shot off of Gavin Williams in a start where Gavin Williams was absolutely lights out. Like, that was the only hit he really gave up that game. I think it was the only run. He's also taken guys like Tim Herron deep, who was a big league reliever, Hunter Gaddis, he took deep, like Kyle Hendricks, which might not be saying much, but like he was taking a lot of big league or top prospects arms out, which I think it does matter who you're doing it against too. He wasn't just feasting on, some of the lesser competition in AAA. So
Louisville has the best lineup in minor league baseball right now, I think. Or I guess they did this past weekend, right? With McLain up now, Will Benson was optioned. Benson is in that lineup. But the other two guys that really jump out here are Christian Encarnacion Strand, who was acquired from the Twins organization in the Tyler Mahle deal last year, and Elly De La Cruz, who again is just baseball's number one overall prospect. Christian Encarnacion Strand, since coming off the IL in 19 games with AAA Louisville, is hitting .341 with an OPS at 1077. He's got 9 homers and 18 driven in 19 games. Elly De La Cruz, since coming off the IL, 21 games, a 960 OPS, 6 doubles, 6 homers, 17 RBIs, and 4 bags. Both these guys have been elite, along with McLain, who is the best player in AAA baseball. So now the question becomes, McLain's up. When does CES join him? When does Elly De La Cruz join him?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. And I think both of those guys getting late starts, kind of makes it a little bit of a slower turnaround in terms of like when we're going to see them get up now. But I love the way it lines up because now you got an opportunity to play McLain every day at shortstop, give him that audition. And if McLain performs, like if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Like if he's performing, he forces you to make a decision now where maybe you get Elly some reps at third. Maybe McLain starts to get some reps in another spot. But I think it's a really fun conversation.
And by the way, third base is like the one spot that they don't really have down pat right now.
No, and Elly could be an elite defensive third baseman, like elite. And I know people are like, oh, but he's the shortstop, whatever. If McLain's playing well, that could just be a left side of the infield that is awesome. And dynamic. So I think that's why it's great that you can get this Matt McLain audition at shortstop, because if he performs, okay, that's great. You got a good problem on your hands. And I think that's what they want to find out here. Christian Encarnacion Strand is nuts to me because he like has a red flag in every single like approach and like kind of, I wouldn't say batted ball because he hits the crap out of the ball.
No, but he's in terms of just twice in 100 plate appearances, right?
46% chase rate. 18.5% swinging strike rate. Both of those are massive red flags. And a 60% swing rate, 75% zone contact. Like all of those are red flags, but he has sustained those red flags for now 2 years and it's just mashed. So there's some guys that are outliers and I think he might be an outlier. So I would like to say traditionally, I'd be like, I'd like to see some of those metrics get a little bit better, this and that. But these metrics have looked like this for a while. And he has maintained a sub 30% K rate, and he continues to hit the shit out of the ball. So maybe at a certain point, you just got to say, hey, let the metrics be the metrics, and let's see what this guy does at the big league level. And this might just be a dude that hits. And I will tell you, any guy I've talked to that's faced him, AA, AAA, opposing teams, everybody, I get the same thing. God, that guy knows how to hit. Which is funny because the metrics say he doesn't in terms of like approach and stuff like that. But this guy, he knows himself. He gets his. He won't walk. He might be a frustrating, streaky player. But again, like I'm not going to argue with some of the better hitters in the minor leagues that have told me that. And you can't argue with the numbers. So this is an outlier guy, and I love it. So I can't wait to see what he would do in Great American Ballpark. He could hit 40 there.
Exactly. And the thing is, he is not the freak athlete that Javi Baez or Luis Robert is. And when you think free swingers that, have massive red flags that for the most part were ignored, and they were, some of the most talented players in baseball at a certain point in a certain year, Robert more recently than Baez. But I mean, dude, Javi Baez finished second or third in NL MVP voting not too long ago. Yeah. Baez had an OPS over 900 in 2021. I mean, these guys are good enough, and we make fun of Baez all the time. We make fun of Luis Robert all the time, but when things are going good, oh my God, is it fun?
Yeah.
And when things are going good for this guy, again, he could hit 40 at Great American Ballpark.
Yep.
So my thought is as simple and as non-metric as it can be, ride this hot hand. It might be time to just see Christian Encarnacion Strand.
Yeah, I don't know what else he really needs to do. Like, is he going to magically have a better approach? Like, he's always going to have a weird approach. Just let him go. So I agree. I think we see him next too. I think we see him very soon.
Okay, interesting. Moving to the NL West real quick. The note that I had here that I texted you was the Dodgers are dodgering while the Padres are padreing. And what I mean by that is the LA Dodgers are 8-2 over their last 10. They've won 5 in a row, including a weekend sweep of the San Diego Padres in LA. The Padres have lost 5 in a row. They are 3 games under 500 as we talk right now. They are 19-22 as of 4:10 p.m. on Monday, May 15th.
Yeah.
Couple of notes that I have here. Let's start with the Dodgers. 3 guys have an OPS over 1,000 in May for the LA Dodgers. Freddie Freeman, Mookie Betts, and Will Smith. Those are your 3 best hitters. There you go.
Recipe to win games.
Recipe to winning games. 11 homers, 31 RBIs, and 34 combined games. James Outman cooling off. Max Muncy been terrible in May, hitting $125, OPSing 430 in 11 games in May. But guess what? David Peralta, Chris Taylor, they're both OPSing over 950. So you've got the 2 guys that were good in April that have gotten bad or average if you're Outman, and you've got the 2 guys that were bad in April getting good in May. So now you look at, all right, the Dodgers are good. Why are the Padres bad? Soto's heating up. Tatis has been good, but probably not to his standards. But Xander Bogaerts is OPSing under 500 in May. Cronenworth's under 600 in May. Machado still looks brutal, which is a conversation in and of itself. The Padres and Dodgers are tied for the second best staff ERA in baseball in May. Seattle's rocking a 2.58. The Dodgers and Padres are both sitting at a 2.61 staff ERA on Monday. But the Dodgers have the 4th best OPS in baseball in May. So that covers the other flip of the coin. The Padres have the 4th worst OPS in baseball in the month of May. So the bats have gone invisible for San Diego, and that's the difference here.
It's pretty wild because you look at the pitching side of things, as you mentioned, for the Padres, exceeding expectations. Like, if you told me the Padres would pitch this way through the beginning of the season, if you told me Seth Lugo would have a 3.18, I'd say, oh, wow, they're in great shape. They must be doing great. If you told me Josh Hader is, pitching to a 1 ERA, I'd be like, oh, they're in great shape. I think the problem, too, you talk about, like, how with the Dodgers, like, guy goes cold, another guy gets hot. And you have enough of, like, the continuity around them to continue to succeed. With the Padres, it's a very, top heavy lineup. So when one guy struggles and one guy performs, it still feels like you're running on a treadmill. It's a little different. I feel like the complementary pieces are a lot worse. So you get a Juan Soto coming to life, but Xander Bogaerts falls off and it's like a wash. You're still kind of running on that treadmill. You're treading water. You look at what you're not getting from Ha-Seong Kim, Manny Machado, Jake Cronenworth. Like you said, like, it's a very top heavy lineup. I'm not worried about Tatis. Like, he looks good overall, and I think he's going to continue to get better and better. But yeah, like, at what point do you start to worry about what you're seeing from Machado? At what point do you start to worry about some of these other guys? I think they'll all get going, but I think this was a really big wake-up call because it was a tough stretch for the Padres. They had to play the Dodgers for 3, the Twins for 3 in Minnesota, and then they had to travel, back to LA for 3 more. And they lost the majority of those, and including 5 in a row as we're recording this. It's a tough stretch, but you're the San Diego Padres. You have opened up the checkbook, and you're supposed to compete with everybody. And I think what's clear right now is that you're a full step below, and you just weren't the test yet. And I don't know how that gets better for them, other than the stars performing.
Right. So my next question was going to be, what's the fix here? Like, is it go trade for more top end talent? Like, turn your big 4 into a big 5 offensively? How do you navigate this? Because they are so hamstrung here, man. They could move Merrill. They could move Robbie Snelling, who we just talked about, who's had a nice start to his pro career. But, like, if anybody's going to do it, it's Preller. If anybody is going to take an already decimated farm and take the last things that have value on the market and move them for another piece in a top-heavy lineup, it's AJ Preller. But the word that we used this offseason when they were constructing this monster was top-heavy. It was not best. We never said best lineup in baseball. We said most top-heavy lineup in baseball. Maybe the best star power in baseball. But guess what, man? Soto was shitty in April. Machado was shitty in April and May. Bogaerts has been shitty in May. You can't work around that when you put all of your eggs in 4 baskets in a 9-man batting order.
Yeah. And I think you've got some pretty big gaping holes. Like, again, we talk about how with the Dodgers, you can survive the streakiness because your weakest link is like a Jason Hayward or a David Peralta, right? Who have been, and Peralta's been kind of bad, but Hayward's been pretty good at the end of the day. Like, it's been fine. You look at the weakest links for the Padres right now, it's the catching position, which
Dude,
is
so bad.
not a spot where you want to be bad. You're oscillating between Brett Sullivan and Austin Nola. You look at the DH spot, that's a big power position, and Nelson Cruz has had a couple nice, games, but he's still a 90 WRC plus guy thus far. He's very old. He's giving you no value otherwise. So your DH is a guy that can legitimately only DH. And that's not great when you don't really have that much of a bench. So I don't really like the situation there in terms of how much they're giving up in the DH spot and the catching spot. And I don't think they're getting much, it's just a really weird situation though, because you look at the lineup, like Tatis, Machado, Soto, Bogarts, Cronenworth, like Kim, then Cruz, Grisham, and Sullivan and Ornola. You're like, that should be good enough. But when Cronenworth isn't hitting, you go from 5 through 9. That's a really bad lineup. Like, that 5 through 9 could be, like, right now, production wise, could be the Washington Nationals.
4 through 9, man. I mean, That's the thing. Like, we give Manny Machado, we give him a pass almost because his name is Machado, right? Like, we give him 2022 as an excuse for the start to 2023.
Well, his whole career. I mean,
right, exactly. Like, there's so much precedent for Manny Machado, but he's a 640 OPS guy so far this year. So when do you not count on him? I guess you have to, right?
You have to. I mean, he's Manny Machado.
No, I mean, you live by the big four, you die by the big four, and Machado, I'd argue, is like more important to the Padres' success than Juan Soto is. Like, they were not in a position to go acquire Juan Soto if Manny Machado's not doing what he was doing, especially in the absence of Fernando Tatis. So I could make the argument here that Manny Machado is the most important piece for the San Diego Padres. And the reason they are 3 games under 500 is because Manny Machado has stunk through the first 6 weeks of the season.
I think that's very fair. And then you also got to think about it this way. Like, I think the easiest way for this team to upgrade is just to get another bat that can give you some consistency. Like, go get a DH type piece. And I think they will, but you guys, there's not that many of those types available right now. Like, you got to wait. You got to wait for the Marlins to stink and call about Jorge Soler. You got to wait for, the Nationals to fully wave the white flag and call for whoever is over there. There's no one really. Yeah, Meneses maybe. And I think, like, you look at what Soto's doing defensively. Like, I think in the best world, you're putting him DH and getting someone that can move around a little bit more in a corner. So I think they're giving up a little bit on the defensive side. I think they're giving up a lot in the DH role and a lot in the catching role. And then Ha-Seong Kim, I love him, but that guy's not been like holding up his end of the bargain either. No,
which really stinks. So I'm worried about San Diego. It's really nice.
And Blake Snell, by the way. I know the pitching's been good.
Snell's been terrible.
You can't have a 4.6 from Snell. Like, Darvish has been good.
Musgrove's been good.
Musgrove, no, but Musgrove's got a 6.6 overall, I think, this year.
Yeah, but Musgrove in May has been a lot better. He's starting to
get to this point. Like, those are 2 guys that have, not held up their end of the bargain. So
sure.
I think the pitching's honestly going to naturally get better on its own. Like, I am worried because, like, I think what we've seen with the concept of the Padres is that if 1 through 4 are not performing at an all-star level, they're going to struggle to score runs.
Yep. Which is so sad because the excitement level for San Diego off the freaking charts. And I hope that they can recapture that.
They will, I think.
I think so. Like, Machado is going to give us a 900 OPS June. I really do feel that in my core.
Yeah. And I think the best way to, like, compare it in terms of, like, leaving something to be desired on the back end, like, look at the Twins and what they're getting from Joey Gallo right now. Is it going to last? Probably not, no. But he'll still be a good mistake hitter. He'll defend and whatever.
And they're thriving now.
They're getting that from Gallo while Buxton's 0 for 26. You know, and again, they're staying afloat. I don't see anybody in the back half of that lineup, stepping up. You mentioned how Outman stepped up for the Dodgers. Like, that was while some of the other guys were struggling. Now your main guys are performing, and Outman's come down to earth a little bit. But then Vargas has, kicked it in a gear. Like, the guys in the back half of that Padres lineup, I feel like I have to stretch my imagination a little bit more to see them pick up, get hot and pick up the slack when needed. And I think that's something that Preller will be very eager to fix.
So Austin Nola, real quick before we move off, is a liability. And I I just don't understand the appeal with Austin Nola much at all here. 2021, he was a 1-win player in 56 games. He had a 100 WRC plus. 2022 in 110 games, he was a 0.2 win player with an 89 WRC plus. So far this year in 29 games, he's hitting a $148 with a 38 WRC plus, and he's a negative 0.5 win player. Like, Nola was a 1.8 win player in 48 games in 2020. That's the only time he's been good in his career, right?
Yeah. No, I agree. And he's been injured all the time since then. So it's just
like, he's a bad defender. He's a bad hitter. It's Stallings, man.
I was gonna say, it reminds me of Stallings right now. And that's the craziest part, is like, you can upgrade that, and I do think that that's playing a huge part in their struggles. Is you have just like an absolute suck from the catching position. Like, any momentum you have just is sucked out there. And then again, like, I feel like when the Padres are up and it's 6, 7, 8, 7, 8, 9 in the lineup, I just switch the channel. Like, I'm just gonna, because I know nothing's gonna happen that inning. I'm gonna go watch another game. Like, and then I'll come back around with top of the order. I don't know if there's another team where I really do that. Again, even the Mets, like, you just go lineup through lineup through lineup. Like, yeah, there's some teams that are underperforming, but like, I look at the back half of the Mets lineup, and those guys can get hot and carry you at points. Sure. I don't see any other team in that tax bracket, and I'm not just talking about spending wise. I'm talking just like talent wise, like in that tier 1. That has such a steep drop off in their lineup. Not even the Los Angeles Angels. Like, that's the one thing that they fixed, I think, going into this year, is that you don't see that steep drop off in the back half of the lineup. Like, you're going to get a little bit of something from Gio Urshela. You're going to get a little bit of something from Renfroe. They've even gotten stuff from like Zach Neto. Yeah, again, that's a guy that, like, I think will give you a little bit more. It's a really interesting situation with the Padres, and they do reload pretty well, so the system's not totally barren. It's not great, but it's not, they have pieces like you mentioned. I wouldn't be surprised if they go out and make a move one way or another.
Yeah, I could absolutely see that too. Again, the Angels 7, 8, and 9 in Sunday morning's game in Cleveland was Urshela, Rengifo, Neto. I'm not turning the channel on that. I'm turning the channel 7, 8, and 9 in San Diego.
Yeah. And especially if they had Ohapi too, like, again, it was now that's Chad Wallach, but you can't fault them for that. Yeah. Like, the Padres signed up for Austin Nola.
Exactly. They traded like some very good players for Austin Nola. Andres Munoz went back to Seattle for Austin Nola. Brash went back to Seattle for Austin Nola, right? That was same thing.
It was, how about Ty France?
Ty France was in the Nola.
Brash wasn't in this one. This one was he was in Taylor Trammell, Ty France, Luis Torrens, and Andres Munoz. So Munoz was in that one. So that is disgustingly terrible.
That's so bad, man. All right. 5 hot Mays that I want to run by you before we do some guesstimation to end the pod. I'm going to name a guy. I'm going to give you what they're doing in May so far. And you tell me if this bounce back from a rough April is valid or invalid. I picked bounce back guys. Like, Mookie Betts has been awesome in May. Obviously, it's valid, right? Like, he's Mookie Betts. That's how that works. Let's start with Soto, staying on the Padre thing. 12 games, he's hitting 370. He's got an 1169 OPS, 9 doubles in 12 games, 9 RBIs, 9 walks, 8 Ks. I'm not asking you if they can keep the pace. I'm asking if the bounce back and getting to, where we expect these guys to be is valid. So is Juan Soto bouncing back?
Yeah, you can put him in the Mookie bucket. Like, he's got it.
But he didn't have it in April.
So I think that Juan Soto was a classic case of a guy who hitting came so easy to for so long that he never knew what it was like to not have it. And I think trying to find it again was such a foreign concept to him that I think it took longer than most. Like, that guy's that talented, shouldn't slump that long. Everybody slumps. Mike Trout slumps. Bryce Harper slumps. All the best hitters slump. We hadn't really seen Juan Soto, slump for a prolonged time. And, I think that was a guy who had it and didn't even know what he had in a way. Like, people always say, like, Mickey Mantle couldn't tell you how to hit a baseball. I almost think Juan Soto, like, was one of those guys that just was born to know how to hit, and he had never really had to break it down. And this is speculative, but that's how because you were seeing all the experimental drills he was doing and things that he had never done before. That was a guy that I don't think he knew what it was like to lose it.
Right. And then he was like, oh shit, like time to figure it out. It feels like he has figured it out. And this may honestly make him a better hitter for the long haul in his career.
Very possible. Very possible. He was seeing 450, 500 million start to evaporate before his eyes, I think.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens now, man. But if he strings together a great, final 5 months of this season into a good postseason, we could see $100 million get tacked back on to what we thought might have dissipated, because we finally saw a flaw in this guy. He turned from a $500 million player to a $300 million player, which is still one of the best players in baseball. But Juan Soto is better than that.
Yeah, he is. I do wonder though, like what is Juan Soto's value? Because he sucks so bad at defense, and I don't care. Like he's such a good hitter, but even as like a Jordan, like Jordan's not getting 450.
No.
Why is he not? Why is he any different than Jordan?
Because he's so young, but Jordan's so young too. But Soto is going to hit like full-blown free agency. I'm not talking arbitration. I'm talking full-blown free agency.
Jordan signed the pre-arb. I wonder what Jordan would get on the open market. I feel like he would be viewed differently, even though like
I bet somebody would pay that. Yeah. I bet somebody would pay Jordan Alvarez 10 years, $300 million. I do.
Yeah, I agree. But I 450, he turned down 450 apparently.
I know. So, I don't know. I could see Soto, I guess, Judge money.
That's crazy. Judge plays center. Again, I'm not trying to disparage Soto. He's one of the best left-handed hitters we've seen in the last several decades. But I do think it's interesting. It's
really weird. All right. Luis Robert, 13 games, hitting 422, 5 doubles, 6 homers in May already, 14 RBIs, a 1442 OPS. This guy's been the best hitter in baseball in the month of May. He was so hard to watch in the month of April when the White Sox were stinking it up. Luis Robert's not a bad player. I just want to get that out there. Luis Robert is an excellent baseball player. Is he made of glass? Yes. Does he have a very frustrating approach at the plate? Yes. But I'm telling you, Luis Robert's an all-star caliber player. I'm totally validating this.
I'm in. Yeah. And look, this is a guy that's going to be streaky always, but I'm absolutely buying what we're seeing right now. And there's a change in approach to go with it that I think really stands out. His chase rate has dropped a little bit, as the year has gone on and through this stretch specifically. Yeah. And the other thing is he sees more sliders than fastballs at this point. And you know what he's doing? He's crushing sliders. Yeah. So he's staying on the baseball more. He's not missing the mistake sliders. And, if you execute it, you can get him. He's a guy that, like, you execute your pitches really well. Yeah, you can put him away. But it's hard to always execute your pitches really well. And what he's doing now is when you don't execute, instead of fouling it off, he's hitting it out. And I think he looks really, really damn good. We always knew he was going to hit fastballs, but for him to be hitting these sliders better while also not swinging at them as much, that always bodes well. I'm in too. I'm 100% in.
I love that. How about Christian Yelich? 12 games, hitting 350, a double, 4 homers, 12 driven in. He's 4 for 4 in the stolen base department, and he's OPSing over 1,000 in 12 games in May. I love to see it. I can't buy it as much as I do with Luis Robert.
No, I mean, look, I love to see it. At the end of the day, this is a guy that's won an MVP and should have won a second one. Like, he's gonna have his moments still. He's very talented. He's 31. He's gonna have some decent stretches. Like, he's never, over the last couple of years, it's been massively disappointing, but he hasn't been some disaster.
No, he's like an 100 WRC plus guy.
He's like a little bit better, I think. Like, he's like a 110 WRC plus guy. Like, he's fine.
He's just not Yelich.
Yeah, and I still think he's not Yelich. Like, the multi-home run game was nice, but you look at everything, like the data doesn't look much different. He's putting the ball on the ground still a ton. I hope something clicked, but I doubt it.
Yeah, like the hot stretch just kind of feels like Yelich, and he'll get out of this hot stretch, unfortunately, and he'll, get right back to his 60% ground ball rate that you feel a little bit more than a ground ball rate that's still apparent, but you're not feeling it as much because he's hitting the crap out of the ball in May. Anthony Rendon, 10 games, hitting 412 with a double, a homer, 8 driven in. He's got a 1041 OPS. He's walked more than he struck out in these 10 games. If Rendon is great for the Angels, they are a team that can absolutely win a series in the postseason. Problem is, I don't buy it from Yelich. I don't really buy it from Rendon right now. I think we're pretty far removed from this guy being, one of the better players in baseball.
Yeah. So what I do buy is that he found a way to be a pretty good hitter, kind of similar to Yelich. Like I think, he's not going to be some like disaster. Like I think he's putting bat on ball, 90% zone contact's pretty nuts. He doesn't chase. He walks more than he strikes out. Like he's a good bat to have in your lineup. The problem is also he just hit the IL like minutes ago. Like, so now he's on the 10-day IL due to a groin strain. He should be back, but like that's been the story, like the never ending story with Anthony Rendon is the injury. So I'm not buying that he'll ever be anything like the guy that, paced the league in doubles and hit 20 to 25 home runs. But I do think he can be a guy that hits for a high batting average and walks, and that's still a good piece for you.
Yeah. How do you view him? Like, obviously he's not a $30 million player right now. How do you view him? What would you consider his market value right now? Do you think he's a $10 million player in 2020?
Are we taking health out of the equation?
No, health in the equation.
Oh, man. Yeah, that's a really hard one. Like if he's
take health out of it, then what do you think he is? Do you think he's
based on this new powerless but really good bat to ball Anthony Rendon?
$15 million player?
Yeah, it's a $12-15 million player. 3 years, 45 for this. I mean, look at what Gene Segura got. 2 years, 17. Like he's a better version than Gene Segura.
So like right, and we're taking out like the weakest point of his game, which is availability, and we're saying that he's a $15 million player. He's getting paid double that. So you put in the weakest part of his game, which is he can't stay on the fucking field right now.
I don't think anybody would give him more than, given everything that's going on right now, I don't think anyone gives him more than 10 a year.
No, so I'm thinking if he were to hit the open market next year, and obviously he's not, like he's, secured in this $300 million deal. But if he were to hit the open market Conforto style, I don't even think this guy's getting a Conforto contract.
Nope. I don't think so either. I wouldn't, because I just think it's too far fetched for him to like have it all click again. Like Conforto, you're like, oh, let's see if he can bounce back. Jock before, like, let's see what he does. Even Bellinger. I thought that was a little bit more of a stretch, but like you could still see it. Rendon with his injury history at 33 years old. No.
All right, last one for you. Riley Green, 12 games, 383, 5 doubles, a homer, 8 driven in, 3 for 3 in the stolen base department. He's got a 973 OPS in 12 games in May so far. Green was off to a really rough start, much like Spencer Torkelson with Detroit in April, and Green was underwhelming last year. Torkelson was really underwhelming last year. The Detroit Tigers are praying that both Riley Green and Torque work out. What this 12-game sample in May is telling me is that it is exponentially more likely that Riley Green fulfills his prophecy, or at least some subdued version of that, than Spencer Torkelson at this point.
Torque's showing some signs, though. He is.
Some, but not as many as you would like to see. No. Like, the prodigious power is non-existent. And I understand it's Comerica, but, like, what happened to this beast of a man in Spencer Torkelson? Where did that go?
He's supposed to be a guy that kind of transcends the ballpark, that you're not going to be worried about it. I think that's why we were so excited. He's
supposed to be Pete Alonso, man. Like, that was seriously the billing.
That was the perfect comp. I'm totally in on Riley Green, because I think that there's going to be like some ebbs and flows. He's 22. And he's got a similar situation where like he's got to get the ball in the air more. But man, does he hit the ball hard? And if you look over the last handful of games, like who he's hitting the ball hard off of, home run off of Verlander. I know he was just coming back, but I don't care. It's still an impressive home run. An absolute rocket off of Tanner Bybee. A 114 mile an hour shot off of Shane Bieber. Like, he hits the ball hard. And this might be a guy that takes a little bit longer to see the power kind of translate into games, but he's making better swing decisions. He's hitting the ball hard, and I think he's starting to see some more consistency in driving it in the air. So I'm in on Green. If I had to pick one, I wouldn't even hesitate. And I think Green is way more likely, like you said, to succeed. But I think he's finally starting to settle in. This is a guy that, jumped through the minors pretty quickly as a high school bat. So 22 years old, like, it can take a little bit of time.
Yep. Real quick, 2 contract guesstimations for you before we part. Mitch Keller and the Pirates have apparently been in contact regarding an extension. That's from Bob Nightingale. And then Marcus Stroman and the Cubs apparently started extension talks, according to Matty Lee of the Chicago Sun-Times. They had preliminary extension talks this spring. Nothing concrete has come from that. We'll start with Keller. We'll end with Stroman. Keller's making 2.4 this year. He's got 2 more years of arbitration. Mark Polishuk wrote this up on MLB Trade Rumors, and he cited Logan Webb's 5-year, $90 million extension. No. I know, kind of crazy. What he was comparing was service time. So the Giants bought out 2 arbitration years, which the Pirates would be doing, and then 3 open market years. Webb is a year younger than Keller. But here's the big difference. Logan Webb, in 494 innings to this point in his career, has a 3.45 career ERA. Mitch Keller has thrown 100 fewer innings, and his ERA is 1.2 runs higher. So we're comparing a guy that has thrown 494 to 386 in Keller, and Webb, who had a 3.45, to Keller's 4.62. Keller's not close to this 5-year 90. No. I think the Pirates could do 6 years 70 for Mitch Keller.
I think that's even pretty generous.
Really?
Like, I want to see.
Last 32 starts, he's got a sub-3.
I know. That is a very impressive stat. And maybe it's just like the name association for me still, but
it probably is.
6 for 70. Like, I guess that in the market now, if you think about what we're seeing, like Taiwan Walker get, I think that is exactly on the money. Honestly, I think that is pretty fair. I don't know if I would do it, but I mean, the Pirates need to start looking at, longevity and solidifying the core, and this is a great way to do it. I think that's about right.
So if you could give Keller 6 for 70 or Roansy Contreras 7 for 100, what would you do?
I'd rather give Keller that deal.
Okay. Yeah. How about 6 for 70 if you knew both those guys were going to say yes? Who do you give the deal to?
Yeah, I mean, we got to see Roansy like actually succeed at the big league level.
I know.
So I'd say Mitch Keller.
But like, that's the thing. So Bob Nutting, the Pirates owner, after they signed Reynolds, I think it was during the press conference, he said, we're looking to extend some other pieces of the core. Obviously, O'Neal Cruz should be at the top of that list. But after that, man, like, who are the extension candidates on this team? Because they already locked up Reynolds. They already locked up Hayes. Give me Cruz. And then, I mean, it's Keller and Contreras, right?
You could get Contreras for like nothing, I think, honestly, with how many years he has leveraged against him and in the lack of consistent performance. I think you could sign him for a very, very cheap pre-arb deal.
7 for 50.
What was it?
7 for 50.
I think you can go even cheaper than that. You got to look at what Sandy signed. I think it was 1 less year.
54.
Yeah, and that was 1 less year of control, but still, like, I think you can go really cheap on Roansy. But something along those lines I think would totally work. I think it's worth it just because he's such a talented arm. Like, he'll be in the mix one way or another. You'll never be like losing sleep over it. But otherwise, yeah, I don't like David Bednar. Like, that's a guy that I don't like paying relievers, but I think it's pretty proven now that this guy just will be good. Like, he's just going to be a good reliever for you. You ran out of gas at the end of last year because they ran him into the ground. But now he's had 2 consecutive fantastic seasons, and he's been even better this year. That's a guy I will give a deal to also.
Okay, got you. Yeah, I think 6 for 65. Keller, final offer there.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Okay. How about Stroman? Let's end with Stroman. Allegedly, this is from Matty Lee from the Sun-Times. The Cubs and Marcus Stroman started talking possible extension this offseason. I don't know what that deal looks like at all. Is it a Lance Lynn extension where he's making 19 and a half in like a 2-year extension, a 3-year extension? Like, how many years do you want Marcus Stroman for? There's a ton of ammo coming through this Cubs farm system right now in terms of starting pitching. Like, I would view him as a gap bridger to the youngest arm. So, like, set an ETA for Cade Horton, have Stroman signed through that year. If Cade Horton's ETA is 2025, give me Stroman on a 2-year extension.
So that's the interesting thing. So he's making 25 this year. He's got a player option for 21 next year. He's going to turn that down. I think that's why we're seeing these negotiations, right? Because 21 million for 1 year, if he hits the open market, we just talked about with Taijuan Walker. I use him as the barometer. Like, he'll get more than Taijuan Walker. I think you go 3-year deal. I don't want a guy like Marcus Stroman in his age 36, 37 seasons, though he is a guy that could age pretty well with his command, the way he mixes pitches, how athletic he is. But I think if you go with like a 3-year, you got a top 21 though. So that's the way you got to think about it.
Yep.
It would be what? He probably wants 4. I'd bet he wants 4. Would you give him 4 years? Age 33, age 34, age 35, age 36?
At 20 annually?
At 20 annually, 4 for 80?
Oh, I don't think so.
With incentives? That's the market, though.
God, I don't know.
Would you rather have him at 4 for 80 or Taijuan Walker at 4 for 72?
I'd rather have him at 4 for 80.
So I think you got to bump that shit up to 85. I think it's 4 for 85.
That's crazy, man. Welcome to the pitching market.
I was going to say, dude, like, that is crazy. Taijuan Walker might have changed the market. I don't know if anyone else uses him as a barometer, but that's my barometer. If that guy gets 4 years, 72, like something that there was 1 or 2. I mean, Chris Bassett as well. I think him and Bassett are relatively similar, Stroman and Bassett, when you think about it. Like, yeah. I know they're not the same type of pitcher, but you look statistically, you look at age. I know he's a little bit younger, but it's not too far off. And what did Bassett get? 3 years, 63? I think 4 years, 85 is about right.
4 years, 85. Okay, I'm here for it. All right, last thing before we go. NBA draft lottery tonight at 8:00. Who wins the Wemby sweepstakes?
There's never been a more important one, right?
Maybe the LeBron one, maybe the Pat Ewing one when the Knicks got it. Who wins?
The rigged one?
Yeah, the rigged one. Who wins the Wembanyama sweepstakes?
What's the probability? Who are the favorites? It's 3 teams would be equally favorites, right?
Yeah, so Detroit, Houston, San Antonio are at 14%. Give me the Indiana Pacers at 6.8%.
I said it's the year of Chicago at 0.5%. It's the year of Chicago for number 1 picks.
They already did the D Rose thing. Like that's my thing. Like, they've already won their lottery when it came to the NBA draft this century.
No, I know, but winning the NHL to have the NHL number 1 pick, apparently they've got like the hockey one, Banyama, going on right now, or something.
Connor
like
Bedard. Yeah. I can't wait to get back into hockey. Haven't watched since they won the Stanley Cup.
Apparently, he's like that dude. I'm gonna go with the Spurs because it's just they don't go away, and they've been away for like 2 years now. And I feel like it's just so classic. Pop's going to put the order in. He's going to stay now for like 5 more years. I think I could just totally see him in a boring ass Spurs jersey. That's my prediction.
Okay. I want Wemby as an Indiana Pacer. A lot of these young Pacers live in my apartment complex because I'm right near Gainbridge. So I want Wemby and I to be apartment mates. And I want to see him, like, Ben Matherin's got a couple of little French bulldogs that I've seen. So I'm thinking, like, if Wemby gets a Frenchie, and I just run into him, like, nice fall day sitting outside, I'll be like, hey, man, let's talk about life. You want to,
yeah.
What do you want to hit on? So I want Wemby to be my new best friend. So that's what I'm rooting for.
I don't blame you. He's generational.
Yep. All right. Just Baseball Show presented by BetMGM. Use either of the promo codes in our show notes. Get your merch, sign up, draft a fantasy team on So Rare. We've got some fun stuff dropping a little bit later this week in that regard. And we'll talk to you guys tomorrow.